turn this down, and open up over here. And let me get this going. Bear with me. Let's see if we can get this working. So anyway, while we're getting it starting to work, if I can get it to work, I'll play this for you. And let's see if I can get this. Is it working? Let's see. Did it work? Did it start? Yeah, here we go. I haven't. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Some of you know it. In Hebrew. Okay, so you're familiar with it. Those of you who had to hear it in the Soviet Union, you had enough of it. But this one is the Israeli version and it's posted by the American Communist Party, which put up a map of Israel, but a map of Israel within the 67 borders, because they want to be politically correct, but very appropriate. And I will make up true confessions. I was officially a socialist. In the 1980s, moved to Israel, worked for the Histadrut. The Labor Party was, and the Labor Union, the Labor Party and the Labor Union were affiliated with the International Socialist Movement, which made me officially a socialist. And I marched in the last May Day parade in Israel. In 1990, it was the last one. After that, they stopped the May Day parades. And I was there as the word socialism was removed from the party plank of the labor movement, and as the labor movement divested itself of its factories because it recognized that in trying to have control of the means of production, which socialism requires, they were stagnating and were not meeting the needs of the laborers. When you get to a point where your own workers strike your company and hold the manager of your own factory as a hostage for the negotiations against yourself, you understand the system is collapsing. And when the Israeli economic structure moved away from the old socialist structure, the economy skyrocketed to the point where GDP is as high as, per capita is as high as any of the best of the European countries. So why do I go to that? Because obviously everything one day, in the good old days, everybody was socialist. Anybody that had a brain was a socialist. That's what it was like in the good old days. Right, yeah.
That song also sounds like Deutschland über alles.
No, Deutschland, no, that's Deutschland über alles. Very different. It's a French, actually it's a French song. It's not a Russian song, it's a French song, and it predates the Soviet Revolution, 1871, the Paris Commune, which was the attempt to reconstruct French society on an egalitarian basis, influenced by socialism, and hence became the hymn of the international socialism. Hence the name, the International, the international. So let's look at this. Huh? Yeah, you know it in Russian, you hear it. And you usually think of Russians when you hear the melody, because anytime there's a movie where there's the old Soviets, that was always played in the background. So, you know, so Jenny, you know it by heart, right? That's right, you lived with it. So my father had enough experience with it. I have ex-former Soviets in my family, enough of that. So, but why do we get there? Because it was the best thing that was in the world. And who made it possible, right? It's Jews, right? But not because Jews are kind, but it's because we think we know the answers to everything. So that's, what can I tell you? That's us. So what is it? We ask this question, what is it about Jews that triggers a historic fear in Western civilization? It doesn't happen so far in Oriental civilization. Japanese and Chinese love all the stories they hear from the Nazis about us, and they believe it. So they don't have this fear, but Western civilization, that's including Muslim civilization, has this fear of the Jew. Well, 1924, maybe you've heard this quote, British journalist William Norman Ewer, how out of God to choose the Jews. You ever hear that one? How out of God to choose the Jews? And the answer is, somebody wrote back, not ad Yusad, the Jews chose God. Right? So we're trying to figure out, why is it the Jews have been such disruptors? So here's Mark Twain, right? Familiar face. Recognize that guy, the curmudgeon, if there ever was one. But look what he says on the Jews. If statistics are right, the Jews constitute but 1/4% of the human race. I think now the percentage is even smaller. Properly, the Jew ought hardly to be heard of, but he is heard of, has always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people. His importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his bulk. List the great names, literature, science, art, music, and so on. This is, by the way, in 1897, Jews were still very poor. There was a handful of prosperous Sephardic and German Jews, but in population-wise, there were very few. In East Europe, they were miserably poor. There's a handful in Germany. And then already in that case, still, they were making an impact, right? All things are mortal but the Jews. All other forces pass but remains. What's the secret of Zimmertag? Right? This cranky people keep on disrupting stuff. So what's the cardinal sin? Here's a great Catholic writer who fought anti-Semitism, Father Flannery. And he writes this: the hubris in the human heart cannot forgive the Jew for bringing into the world a transcendent God and the divinely sanctioned moral law. Jews have suffered because they bear the burden of God in history. Anti-Semitism is symptomatic of an animus against God, and it is deeply lodged in every person. In other words, that every person does not want to be moral in core. And the idea of an overwhelming morality looking at us is uncomfortable. And who gave it to us? Who taught it to us? The Jews, right? So Bernard Lazare, even the French Dreyfus affair, says, why is the people always hated the Jews? Well, we look at the story of Abraham, the myth of Abraham, Midrash, toppling the idols to the floor. And the idols never stopped falling and never stopped breaking, right? Jewish disruptor in history. Lyrically, a novelist, George Steiner, created a novel about Hitler being kidnapped. And they corner Hitler, the Portage de San Cristobal AH. 1981, the Israeli agents find Hitler and they ask him, what drove you? He says, was there ever a crueler invention, more calculated to harrow human existence than that of an omnipotent, all-seeing yet invisible, inconceivable God? The Jews invented conscience. Terrible, terrible. This is, right? We the ones, we're trying to teach the world, whether you want to or not, that's how we're seeing. So we go to this figure, who is the great hero both of left and right, both in left and right, Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, and one of his books is called The Antichrist. Right? He's coming in opposition to all morality, the end of morality, the end of good and evil, beyond good and evil. So he has the famous statement, God is dead. Right? And he writes here, the consequence of morality, the weak and the botched shall perish. The first principle of our charity and what should help them to it, help the weak perish. What is more harmful than any vice? Practical sympathy for the botched and the weak, which is Christianity. And of course, he blames Jews for it because they gave it to Christianity. It's what he calls the slave morality. The slave morality is that the slave dictates to the master that he must look after the slave. And he calls that evil. And that comes from us. Now, he doesn't like Jews, but in a way, he dislikes Jews less than he likes Christians. Because he says, at least Jews are practical. They take care of themselves. Christians are altogether immoral. In his percentage, this view is the root of all evil. Well, now, if God is dead, then obviously, if there's no God, then everything is permitted. Right? You know, Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky's line. When we come into modernity, let's see who's the one who's smashing idols, who's smashing the existing order. The idea that there is a moral conscience ruling the universe, who's smashing it? It's Jews who are smashing it, right? There's a foundational morality. Jews are smashing it. Oh, Marx, Freud, Einstein. Now, of the three, the last two remained identifiably Jews. But the first one, Marx turned against his people maliciously. And of the last three, Einstein still insists on the God idea, not in the classic, but in a scientific sense, and a moral code underlying. Freud also had a moral code. Marx did not need a moral code because science would replace the moral code. Economics, science of economics. Well, so all three undermine the basis of Western civilization, whether it's for good or for bad. Oh, there's the figure, probably since Paul, the Jewish figure who uprooted existence for half the world. So he's a grandson of rabbis on both sides. Both his grandfather on side one and grandfather on side two were rabbis from distinguished rabbinic line. His father, and like all Jews at that time in Germany, Christianity meant nothing, Judaism meant nothing. If that's the case, you get vertaucht, you go dunk in the baptism font, and you put your kid to Sunday school in the Lutheran church, like everybody, because now you can get the law position. Now you can get the government position you want. Right? Become a member of the Protestant church, Lutheran, Evangelische Kirche. Karl is now at the age of 6 starting to be raised as a Christian. Not that he knows anything about it. The father's not a real Christian. He's not a real Christian either. But he's a spoiled, rebellious child. He's deep into mischief before he turns serious. So some of this rebelliousness is what is expressing itself in his ideas. He does a doctorate in ancient philosophy, and then he becomes a journalist. And this is around the 1840s when there's a new wave of revolutions in Germany, end of the 1840s, 1848. That's why we have a large German Jewish contingency in the United States, building Woolworths and other institutions because they, as refugees in 1848, because they were in the liberal rebellion against the establishment, out of there, here. So he's out of Germany, actually soon into Paris, also for the same reason. But he starts his major writings during this period. And his good friend is Moses Hess, who is the socialist before Marx. He's the one who's interested in socialism. And he introduces Marx to the idea of socialism. He brings his friend Engels, who is a wealthy capitalist, who has inherited a bucket of wealth, and he's a capitalist. And he brings him into the process. Without Engels, Marx would have starved to death. Engels kept on doling out his paycheck. That's how Marx stayed alive. He was a poor man most of his life. He depended on capitalism to support him. And he believed in capitalism. Actually, you don't understand the system. He believed in capitalism in his day. He says it's not going to continue, but in this day, it's essential. So it's this Hess then who later on abandons Marx, remains a socialist, but abandons Marx and starts to preach about Zionism long before Herzl. So anyway, is a brilliant thinker. I'm not going to go too deeply into the philosophy. The big trend in philosophy was Hegel, and the history being the result of the human will, and he turns it upside down. He says history is the result of the means of production. It is not the goal of human freedom that drives history, but means of production. Economics is the only determinant in human history. But we're coming into an era that is what we call materialism. What do we mean by materialism? That not the ideas control, but the physics of the world. Physics, not metaphysics. So Marx sees economics as the key force in human development. And sort of put it on its, in a nutshell. Marx is concerned about the alienation of the human being. Very interesting point. Alienation as a core problem for human beings. It does have a sense of psychology in this also. Where in the modern industrial society, we are very much alienated in many ways. But his main term is alienation of labor. What does that mean? If you're a craftsman, you make this, the beautiful handle, it's nice, it looks good. You invested emotionally into it. Somebody comes to you, you barter, you exchange, you pay. There's something, you've put your heart into it. And the rabbis are aware of it also, actually. They point out one should never bug a salesperson about his product because his heart's invested in what he's created. So you should either buy it or don't buy it, don't bug it. But he calls this the alienation of labor. You go into the factory, you no longer have that personal relationship. So the great textile mills, you're sitting there pushing a button, a lever, a lever, a lever. There's no connection. You have no soul put into the product of your labor. Then there's the next step, which is the idea of surplus value of labor. Whereas when I'm working one-on-one on this craft, my dollar, my hour for my work is this one piece. I get paid for my hour of work, what I've produced. In the factory system, I put in my 1 hour, I produce 1,000 pieces of this. So I get my 1 hour of work for this piece, but the owner gets 999 pieces of this, right? The surplus value of labor. Now, he's not original in this. He's actually building an idea from another Jewish economist, David Ricardo, also had converted in his day to Unitarianism. I think Ricardo lives in England. And he takes, that's where he gets this idea about labor value, value of rents and so on. So Marx goes and says, well, look at human civilization. We see a movement of different modes of production, agrarian, the feudal, the medieval crafts and the guilds, the beginning of capitalism, capital, I mean the word money, and centrality of acquiring capital as opposed to land, gold, or hard assets. You really don't want the hard assets. You want the power that finance brings. That's the goal. And hence his great work is Das Kapital, money. That's really the translation. So what's interesting is Marx describes the problems of our economic system, but he never comes up with a solution. He talks vaguely how it'll fix itself. It's inevitable, but he doesn't try. He never does. He gives comments here and there on various attempts by socialist movements, which he mostly doesn't like. Says, look, in one of them he says, if this is Marxism and I'm Marxist, it's very easy at knocking things down. But he looks at what's the key problem. The key issue of capitalism is that it not only must crush the laborer to continue squeezing more productivity out of the laborer, but then it also crushes small business in this competition, the petit bourgeois, the little labor, the little independent entrepreneur must get crushed in this big system. And then the capitalists, each one crushes the other. You create monopolies, right? And all this is economically inevitable. In fact, you know that economics is one of the few social sciences that's considered a hard science. The others are fluffy. But it's also called the dismal science, because ultimately in economics, I can't give you the money. That's the idea. So Marx appreciates capitalism in his day. It is correct in his day. It's not moral, it's not immoral. That is what is. And so definitely Germany and England are advanced stages of capitalism. Therefore, they will collapse under the weight of capitalism. This will be replaced by dictatorship of the proletariat, right? The workers all will know what to do, and ultimately the withering of the state. There will be no society anymore, no state, all free. Everything will return to the early state of human existence in which people shared and gathered together from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. That's the world that he promises. Now, in this scheme of things, Russia and China would never become communists at this point because they're still in their agrarian state. Of course, he was wrong on that. There's other things. Okay, so I have an essay from my father. My father had spent several years in prison in Berlin under the Nazis, and fellow prisoners in there were either fascists that Hitler felt were too dangerous for his power, or communists who was cleaning up. So he got to study from both of them. What are the ideologies? Plus his doctorate was in political science. He knew it very well. So he summarizes this in an essay that I have from 1937. Marx proved human life is not determined by will and resolution, by blind law of deterministic power of economics, allows no resistance by any other force. Historic development determined by the economic condition, the way a given society is set by manner of production and exchange of goods. People do not shape their historical societal life through reason and free choice, just the opposite. And it's quoting from Marx, it's not human consciousness that determines existence. On the contrary, it's the historical existence which determines human consciousness. In other words, we are shaped by the things around. We are just cogs in the wheel. Right? Do you ever see Charlie Chaplin's movie? It was a famous one where the guy he's in a factory and everything is automated and he's caught in the cogs in the wheel, literally. That's a civilization. You can't escape it. It's beautiful. It's neat. It's a clean theory. It's the science of its day. Economic theory. It is a comprehensive explanation of all that is. And just like faith in the Bible, it has a messianic era. It will happen, inevitably. it is now a new religion. It does not need God or revelation. It's economics. Marx is the prophet. Economics is the God. And it's not that he's writing as a Jew or Christian directly. I mean, sometimes they want to say, well, you see, it's inspired. It's not inspired by the prophets. There's no place for the prophets. But he's inspired by the ideologies of Western civilization that come out of Christianity, that come out of Judaism, out of the Hebrew Bible. Very indirect, right? This unending force guiding civilization. That is what Christianity and Islam both have from us, from the biblical source. And he is developing in a secular line. Unfortunately for us, and this is where it killed us, Marx also doesn't, it killed other people too, doesn't need or want Jews. So he wrote an essay. This is before he actually formulated his theories of communism. He was beginning to speculate on this. And what does he write about his fellow Jews? Writes about his fellow Jews. What's the basis of Judaism? Practical needs, self-interest. What's the worldly religion of the Jew? Huckstering. What's his worldly God? Money. Well, then emancipation from huckstering and money, consequent from practical, real Judaism, would be the self-emancipation of our time. The emancipation of the Jew is the emancipation of mankind from Judaism. All right, because he's looking in his day. And who is making the economic structure possible are people like the Rothschilds, who invent the idea of modern finance. And what he's saying is that Europe has become Jewish in that thinking, in that mentality. Now, if we get rid of the Jews, we get the Jew to leave his Jewishness, Europe will be freed from the crushing burden of the financial system. The social emancipation of the Jews, the emancipation of society from Judaism. He believes that he will solve the Jewish problem by getting Jews to break from their Jewishness, to break away from this and be part of the working people, then everything would be different. Now, we asked the question, did Marx have any place in his heart for Jewish suffering? So there appears to be one or two writings that he had during the pogroms in Russia where he indicates a sympathy for Jewish suffering. I have not been able to find the reference to it. I've seen it. I couldn't find it with a Google search. Google search is not always effective. And a lot of things that don't appear that should appear. But he does have some nasty things about Jews. He settles for several years in a place called Ramsgate. It's by the sea. He's sick. His wife is sick. He settles there for the airs, the ocean airs. And he describes this full of fleas and Jews. Right? And he settles there to get healthy, full of fleas and Jews. And he talks about his rival in socialism, Ferdinand Lassalle. Now, Lassalle wants to make compromises with the government to advance the interests of the laborers. And he's willing to make concrete, and we know this, the man who invents Social Security is Chancellor of Germany, Bismarck. He invents Social Security for us because he understands you have to improve the conditions of the laborers in order to have a stable society. And Lamarck and Lassalle is working with him. So what does he say about that? He is a Jewish N-word. I don't know what word they use in the original German, but comparable, right? That's it. Both things are wrong with him. Well, Lassalle was Jewish, but the N-word is Marx's own addition. Marx was not particularly sympathetic. I mean, he said things about other peoples around the world, but he also had very nasty presumptions comparable to other Europeans about other races and peoples. He didn't break from his times in that sense. So, yeah.
Can I ask something? Was there, like in the 19th century, a presence of race consciousness?
Oh, yeah.
Europe was white, right?
Well, Europe was white, and they're very conscious of being better than everybody. And the Jews are the worst race that they've got if they get rid. I'm starting to think that way. The Jews are the one mistake inside Europe. We got to solve it somehow. All of Europe, the Jewish problem bugs all the Europeans, bugs the Jews, bugs the Europeans, non-Jewish Europeans. A Jew is a Jew in Germany, not a German Jew. Even though the German Jews thought they were Germans first, but the Germans didn't sense that until too late. And then everybody else is lower on the totem pole, right? That's one of the problems, right? Hence we justified conquering Africa and Asia because we were going to civilize them, right? The French, la mission civilisatrice, right? The missionizing purpose of our existence to bring them, to raise them up. We would raise them up. Well, anyway, because Marx is the same. They're all the same. He's more concerned about their suffering, but he has that European attitude. But anyway, I'll take a title of a famous book that was written right after World War II by essays of former communists called The God That Failed. It was edited by Arthur Koestler, who had written another novel, Darkness at Noon, about how the communist system, especially under Stalin, had been totally corruptive of the human soul. So anyway, so the workers said the God that failed. And indeed, Marx created a new God. Economics, the movements that came afterwards with them, religious movements requiring absolute adherence to the new catechism. That's why communists could not stand socialists. Socialists and communists both share this one theme, which is a Marxist element, which is that the society must own the means of production. The major factories, the major field, land, everything else. You can have petty exchange and you can have ownership of small things, but these big things are essential and they must be held by the society in the name of the people. So anything less than that prevents that from happening. So when you institute things like Social Security, as socialists would demand, I want to have this first, medicine, medical care first, we'll work our way up. You're stopping the worker from rebelling because he's now satisfied. He got his Social Security, he got his health care. That's preventing the revolution. So the first one you want to get rid of is the other socialists in such a system. You have to, right? So it's an absolute blind system, new category. Well, why did it fail eventually, right? One of the flaws was the premise in economics, which was that it's based on the idea that ultimately there's only so much you can produce. And once the capitalist has acquired everything, there's nothing left for anybody. And then they all blow up. But it didn't happen. As we see, especially as we end into the competition of the 1980s and the 1990s, the whole socialist system in Russia and China collapses completely. That's the first thing we see. We also see that in India, they abandoned socialism. Israel, all the countries that were socialist countries abandoned socialism, and you have a great skyrocketing of productivity and longevity also as a result, as soon as that idea is abandoned. I was there, as I said, I lived through it, as I saw the labor movement jettison all the pitfalls. Second, that capitalism would not be able to provide the basic goods the working class needed to prosper in terms of social benefits. And as I said, Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor of the new German Reich, started with Social Security because he understood that workers needed security. And then you had someone like Henry Ford come along and pay his workers a good wage because he realized he'd create consumers for his car, right? They could correct this system of collapsing and crushing everybody and give out the goods to a broader, greater basis. And finally, the idea that he would not realize the dictatorship of the proletariat would prove to be a greater enemy of the human soul than capitalism with all its cruelty ever could. And just ask anybody here who has lived in the workers' paradise what kind of paradise it was. Right? So that is where. So here is Marx, as I say, here's the first of our great Jews, right? Still much in Marxism that has benefit and value, the emphasis on the needs of economics as the force driving, and then the need to make sure that the economic system produces the goods to satisfy human needs. When the system is stopped, and there's a danger of the systems, like you had during the pandemic, you have the danger of social unrest and disturbance. As long as the system is able to produce, right, then that's determining history. Production determines what we are doing. So there's an important point in his thinking. Okay, so that's it for my talk for today. Next week, I want to go into Freud and see how he messed us up, but he really also helped also in freeing ourselves in many ways from a lot of our own demons. And that was his intention. Yeah.
Most of these happens on the Atlantic, where Aristotle was being kind of believing. But in certain sense, the real struggle was with Aristotle.
And aristocracy were killed off already with the French Revolution. It's the capitalist aristocracy, the oligarchy.
They all started taking the role of the aristocracy.
Yeah.
Somehow we powers were kind of similar, and maybe that's why people started already.
Well, it's that, yeah, the capitalists could accrue power far more than the aristocracy could. Look at the robber barons, Rockefellers, Carnegies. Now, what they ended up was they produced a lot of good things also in the process, right? I think of it, what's his name? Microsoft, Bill Gates.
Okay.
He has produced more jobs on planet Earth for more people than Mother Teresa, than anybody, anybody by volunteering or giving away the goods. For why? For his own purpose. Now, he set up his charitable fund, is doing a lot of good things, but his goal was producing capital. Through what? Through his very manipulative and aggressive control of computer systems, right?
In general, I can say that most of the successful people started small, but actually had a to become owners or just driving the workforce, become and took advantage of that. Producing at the same time.
Yeah. So one of the great arguments that we have now in modern society, modern political theory, is the argument that our society is static, that no one can move up or down anymore. This is a classic Marxist argument you hear. Because people in the bottom level stay in the bottom level of generations. People in the top stay in the top. It does not take into account that people have been going up and down, more up in greater numbers than down in the modern economic system. So you can have reform, corrections and amendments to find what's missing, but you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater to do it. When you do it, you get the gulag of the Soviets. State. I know what's best for you. If the party knows what's right. The party knows what's right. I'll stop with this story my uncle told me. My father and my uncle both escaped to the Soviet Union during the Holocaust. They're in Central Europe, in Central Asia, in Kyrgyz, and they work in a factory, and it's a chemicals factory. And my uncle is looking at the production of something they produce soaps, things like that. And he sees the workers there in the factory they got huge vats. They pour the ingredients into the vat, and then they're sitting and they're waiting. Well, says, what are you waiting for? Well, we're waiting for the ingredients to mix themselves so that the soap will be produced. He says, wait a minute. You're sitting and waiting. Take a paddle and stir so that the ingredients will be able to combine. So they take the paddle and stir, and then voila, suddenly there's soap. What was taking days and days, suddenly there's soap. You would have think the head of the factory would call him in and say, oh, great. No, you did this without the party. He was penalized. He did it without the party, right? And this is the thinking. I know what is right. Don't bother me with the facts. And that is the essence. Okay, so with that, everybody good Shabbos, and the Kiddush is set and ready to go.